the benefits, in my opinion, about being an athlete, trying to do that and be an engineer, was all of the resources I had as an athlete. Like being able to have access to tutoring services and access to, the athletic facilities helped me succeed in some of the more tough classes as you got into diffy Qs, as you got into thermodynamics. So use those resources. There's benefits to that across the board.
Hello, everyone. This is author Tim Brown, the book Uncommon Athletes. I'm excited to have with me today a longtime friend. I watched her grow up here in Columbus, Ohio. Kayla Carter Maxey, excited about all the great things she's doing now. She's currently a visiting faculty Biomedical Engineering professor at University of Indiana, IUPI. I think I got that right, but she's doing that. But her real story is that she started out, I remember, as a gymnast back in the day, and then she ended up, her family relocated to Wisconsin, where she picked up the basketball, as a basketball star. Her team won a state championship, but she ended up being a great track athlete as well, and continued her track career at Syracuse University, where she majored in bioengineering and also continued her education. But the exciting thing about this interview is that she's an uncommon athlete, because not only she's a great athlete, college professor, but she also founded an organization called UnboundED Genius. It's an initiative to make things, to just expose young people to the field of STEM, of engineering, technology, and math or whatnot. So Kayla, welcome to the show. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how'd you get involved, and how you doing all this?
Well, I appreciate you first for having me. Secondly, good community, right? You were a part of that community early on. He ain't going to tell you, but he used to make me shoot in the gym during lunch. But I think that was always fostering this. You can be a little bit of everything. And I truly believe that, like, a combination, of my house, my family, but also being at Sunshine really fostered this idea that you didn't have to be one or the other. Like, you could be super intelligent, you could like math and science, and you could be an athlete, and all of those things were cool as long as you figured out a pathway that worked for you. And so I think that's something that stuck with me through all of this. So I don't try to negotiate my identities. I just try to be who I am. And with that comes a lot of this: being an athlete, being a scientist, being a community engaged person.
Mm-hmm. What would you say to some young athletes about those opportunities that we're talking about, how to be an uncommon athlete, not just one thing, not be identified as one thing?
Absolutely. I would say that it's okay to be a trailblazer. This has not historically been a field that's accepting for people of color, and especially not women in that field. But if your passions and your interests lie there, you will find a community. Like, there are a wonderful community of Black scholars that I'm involved with, Black scientists that I've come across with. And even though sometimes in your own environment, it may feel like you're the only one, you're not. Like, there's many of us out there and willing to support you as you come along. So I would say, from an athletic standpoint, it doesn't have to be either or. It's just about finding the community that fits you. And one of the benefits, in my opinion, about being an athlete, trying to do that and be an engineer, was all of the resources I had as an athlete. Like being able to have access to tutoring services and access to, the athletic facilities helped me succeed in some of the more tough classes as you got into diffy Qs, as you got into thermodynamics. So use those resources. There's benefits to that across the board.
Yeah, you said something well there that young people, I think athletes don't realize. Not only do you have the athletic training, bigger, stronger, faster, but you also have the academic help as well, to achieve those academic goals. And sometimes we focus so much, I see athletes focus so much on the athletic side, and they miss that other side of it. Those other resources that are available to them as well. You also are a basketball official.
Yes.
I saw you on the NBA G League roster, officials. I'm just still trying to figure out how you're doing all this, but how did that come about?
I lost a bet to my dad.
Okay.
My father is an official at the high school and small college level. I was home. I graduated my undergrad during the first financial crisis. So I was home for a year. And that's when I went back and got my master's. But during that time, my dad was kind of like, how you want to make some extra money? How about you try this? And I'm like, I don't want to officiate basketball. But there's been a lot of really great opportunities and allows me to stay connected to my athletic identity. So I'm a Division I women's college official. I've worked in the G League for several years. And so balancing is hard. Like you have to prioritize. And of course, for me, all of this was like pre-children. But you prioritize what's important to you. And so during that time, obviously it was like my job that pays me, and then it was officiating, and it was me, like I could do that. And so part of the reason that I no longer work in the G League is part of that prioritization, right? Like eventually I needed that time back to do the community work that I wanted to do. And not because I don't value officiating, I still officiate at the Division I level, but I have scaled it in a way that I can keep that as a piece of me while not giving up the community piece or me being in the office as a professor.
Sound like you're I've heard that community, community of scholars and community. What led you to this founding the UnboundED Genius? What led you to that?
Yeah, so UnboundED Genius came while I was still working in industry. So I spent a significant amount of time developing new medical devices once I graduated. And I did that in combination with kind of getting my master's along the way. And what I found was there was me. I probably could count in the two organizations I was in the number of Black women who had engineering degrees on one hand. Most of the Black people or people of color that I saw at the manufacturing plant. And that was frustrating to me because they were equally intelligent, right? It's not about ability, it's about access. And so I started to figure out like, I don't necessarily consider there's anything astronomically special about me. If I can do it, you can do it. And that's what I tell all of my students. If I can get through it, you can get through it. It's all about support. And so UnboundED Genius gave me that pathway to start talking about access to STEM, and like STEM is an opportunity for you to take some of these things that you like. If you're passionate about world change, you can do that in STEM. If you're passionate about athletics, you can do that in STEM. And especially in biomedical engineering, you can do devices for orthopedics. You can bridge these things across boundaries, and UnboundED Genius allows me to do that.
A story of a student who came to you and you just saw them light up, once you're able to expose them. Give me a story.
Yeah, so, I think my middle schoolers are the most fun. Usually, and most of our workshops happen at like the local library. So I try to go into the community where students are at, because then we don't have to deal with the barrier of transportation. And the thing that I do in UnboundED Genius that makes us slightly different is we use engineering design thinking, but we use it so students work on their passion projects. So I ask them, what change do you want to see in the world? And that's what we brainstorm around. And that's what we build prototypes to. And because of that, they realize that they're creators. Like I can create change. And I don't think we always empower our students to be the creator. We often empower them to be the consumer. And so like one of the little boys, he wrote me on Facebook afterwards and was like, this was the greatest thing. I went to my school and I started the food closet so that my friends aren't hungry, because his was about food insecurity. And so some of these projects have come to things that they were able to fund through their schools. And to me, that's the most rewarding part.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just exposure, exposing them to and letting them know that they, like you said, they can be creators, that they have great minds. As you think about the life values or the skills that you acquired through sports, how those help you in your business world and just in corporate America? How those skills help you in those areas?
As an athlete, we're adaptable. If you are any type of athlete that does anything competitive, right? You know how to operate under pressure. Time management, because I grew up in a house where my mom was like, if your homework ain't done, you ain't going to practice. So like those prioritizing how to get things done, you're so used to that it doesn't feel weird to do a lot of things at once because you can prioritize those. The other part of it is you meet so many different people from so many different backgrounds, and you're not uncomfortable in those situations because that's always been a part of your life, and you've been able to find commonalities previously through sports, but you use those same skills to find commonalities in the workforce. And I think to me, like those are best parts about being an athlete on top of just like being great at athletics, which is always fun. The rewards of competition is fun, but it allows you to transfer those into what your career wants to be.
That's good. What advice would you give to a young student athletes about being involved in other activities, even in the community as an athlete, the influence that athletes have? I know you were at Syracuse, and I'm sure you got to be involved in a lot of community activities there at Purdue. But what are some advice you would give to young athletes?
I always tell people to get involved in as many things as you can as early as you can. You always have time to like scale out, and especially if you're like in high school or earlier than that, like do multiple sports, play multiple things. If you want to go and do theater in the off season, do that, because when you get to the collegiate arena, that becomes your focus, right? One discipline, one your academics, right? That's your whole focus. And so don't miss out on those opportunities. The other piece of it is like, yeah, we had tons of community events as athletes where we got to get into the community. And I would say that they honor you as a role model. So even when we were out in the grocery store, people know your athletic gear versus what you get at the bookstore.
Right.
So like, you know,
What you get at the bookstore, it's a little different.
True. They recognize that it's different. They recognize your backpack says football or track or basketball, whatever. So like, just know they like people are looking up to you even when you're doing common things. And so keeping that in mind as you're out and about is important.
Good. Lastly, I don't want to miss this for parents. Talk about your mom and dad, and talk about the role that parents play in all this, because you know you become who you are. Got that? But talk about encourage parents.
Yeah, so you know what? I was fortunate that I lived with an engineer. So engineering wasn't uncommon to me. And you know, even my now 21-month-old knows what an engineer is because we talk about it at home. However, not everyone has that experience. And I think as a parent, and me being a parent now, like it's okay. It's okay for your student or your child to be interested in something different. It's just about you finding the opportunity and the people that have the expertise to help fuel that for your child. I know I often hear parents complain about, oh, my kid's on Minecraft all day, or they're playing, you know, Fortnite or whatever. Like those are coding skills. And they're very important to us just not only interacting with each other, but how businesses run and all of that. So get them into a coding camp if that's what they like. So there are resources out there. And I think as a parent, you don't have to know how to do it. You just need to know how to get your kids to it. And so I just encourage you to fuel those things, even if they aren't necessarily aligned with your personal interests, because your student A is going to be happier. Your student's going to be happier as an athlete if they can bridge these gaps of their multiple identities.
Right. That's good word for parents. I was so blessed by this conversation and just wanted to get you on here because I really believe that one of the goals of this whole series is to expose young people to see younger people, to see people like yourself who have accomplished those things, someone that looks like you know, that's able that not only is a great athlete, but also is doing well with life after sports. And that's one of my goals with this. So I want to thank you for taking your time. And I know you're busy because I read all that on the resume, so I know you're busy. But I just appreciate you taking some time to share with the audience, you know, about how they can do all these things and not be pigeonholed into one area, and not just
having me.
Be successful in that. All right, Kayla. Well, I appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to seeing all these great things that you're doing. Particularly excited about that UnboundED. I think that's a great concept, a way to expose young people to the science there. So be blessed. And
thank you. I
have
appreciate
a good day. And I'll tell everybody, Sunshine Christian Academy, how well you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right. Bless. Bye now.